There comes a moment in every believer's life when the atmosphere shifts. You can feel it in your spirit before you see it with your eyes. The storms start raging harder. The attacks come fiercer, and the waiting feels longer. But don't mistake the pressure for punishment. Many times it's the sign that something greater is on its way. When God is about to release something big into your life, the enemy will do everything he can to distract you, discourage you, and derail you. But if you hold on, if you stand firm, if you keep the faith, you'll see God deliver what no man can stop. Pressure has a way of showing up at the very moment you're ready to move forward. And many times it comes so heavy that you wonder if you'll be able to carry it. Yet that pressure is not there to punish you. It's there to shape you. Think about how God molds clay in the hands of a potter. The pressing, the turning, the reshaping. It all seems uncomfortable, but it's necessary to bring out the design. In the same way, pressure in your life is the evidence that God is forming something bigger than you can currently see, preparing you for what's ahead. When life begins to tighten around you, when demands grow greater and responsibilities pile higher, that's when growth is taking place. Muscles don't develop without resistance. Trees don't root deeply without storms. In the same way, your spirit won't mature without the weight of challenges pressing against you. Pressure is God's way of expanding your capacity so that when He places more in your hands, you'll have the strength to hold it. Often, the mistake we make is interpreting pressure as rejection. We think God is closing in on us or turning away, when in reality, He's getting us ready for a higher level of influence. If you've been asking for greater blessings, greater responsibility, or greater purpose, you must also prepare for greater pressure. The intensity of what you carry today is often the preview of what's coming tomorrow. Consider the way a seed is planted. It is buried, covered, and pressed down into the soil. To the natural eye, it looks like the seed has been discarded. But beneath the surface, the pressure of the soil is what activates growth. Without that pressure, roots would never develop, and the seed would never break open to produce life. In the same way, the pressure you feel is the sign that something within you is about to break forth. Pressure also reveals what's inside. When life presses you, it squeezes out either bitterness or faith, fear or trust, weakness or strength. That's why God allows it, because it exposes what needs to be refined before He elevates you. Promotion without preparation would crush you, but promotion after pressure builds you into someone who can carry the weight of new responsibility. Think about the story of Joseph. He endured betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. Each stage added more pressure to his life. But what seemed like setback after setback was actually preparation for the palace. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, Joseph was not just a dreamer. He was a man with the wisdom, strength, and character to handle promotion. The pressure had prepared him for a destiny that required more than natural ability. Pressure also keeps you humble. It reminds you that you cannot do this in your own strength. The weight of what you face drives you to depend on God at a deeper level. And that dependency is exactly what sustains you when the promotion comes. Without the pressing seasons, many would step into blessings, thinking they achieved them by their own power. But pressure creates a posture of reliance that ensures you'll give glory to God when He elevates you. It's important to see that pressure is not permanent. It's a season, not a sentence. Just like the caterpillar must endure the tight cocoon before it can fly as a butterfly, you too must endure the confinement before you step into your calling. The very thing that feels like it's crushing you is the process that transforms you. The greater the promotion God has for you, the greater the pressure you may feel before it comes. This is why some of the heaviest seasons precede the most powerful breakthroughs. Don't run from the weight, don't despise the pressing, and don't misinterpret the struggle. What you feel now is proof that God is positioning you for something greater than you imagined. Whenever you are on the verge of stepping into something greater, the attacks against you seem to rise to another level. It is not because you are weak, but because you are close to breakthrough. The enemy doesn't waste energy fighting someone who is not a threat. He intensifies the pressure when he sees you are about to walk into a promise. That sudden surge of resistance is often the clearest indicator that promotion is near. What seems like chaos is really confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. The attacks can come from places you never expected. People who once supported you may suddenly turn against you. Opportunities that looked certain may collapse at the last moment. Even your own mind may feel like a battlefield, with doubts and fears attacking your confidence. But the timing of these struggles is not random. The closer you get to breakthrough, the more the enemy works to discourage, distract, and derail you before you step into your next level. Think about a woman in labor. The contractions become sharper and more intense just before the moment of delivery. If she didn't understand the process, she might assume the pain means something is going wrong. But in reality, the pain is a sign that life is about to come forth. In the same way, intensified attacks in your life do not mean failure is near. They mean new birth is about to happen. The enemy thrives on fear. So his attacks are designed to make you question whether you are strong enough, worthy enough, or prepared enough to handle what's ahead. But if he's attacking you, it's because he knows there's something valuable inside you. Thieves don't break into empty houses. The battle surrounding your life is proof that there is treasure in you that heaven intends to release and hell intends to stop. When the attacks intensify, it's easy to think God has abandoned you. But in reality, God is allowing the battle because he knows the fight is shaping you for victory. Just like David had to face Goliath before he could wear the crown, you may have to face giants before you walk in your destiny. The attacks don't signal God's absence. They are the battlefield where God proves his power through you. It's also worth noticing that attacks before breakthrough often expose what cannot go with you into your next season. Certain relationships, habits, and attitudes get tested in the fire of resistance. Those who cannot endure the storm will fall away, and that's by design. God will not let you carry excess baggage into your promised place. So the attacks prune your life of what is unnecessary before elevation. The attacks that come before breakthrough also reveal the authority you carry. You don't realize how strong you are until you are forced to stand in the middle of opposition. Every fiery dart you endure and overcome becomes a testimony that strengthens not only you but those who watch your life. Your ability to stand in the heat of the attack is evidence that you are being forged into a warrior, not a victim. Many times, the enemy's plan backfires. What he intends to use as a stumbling block becomes the very platform God uses for advancement. Joseph's brothers tried to destroy him, but their attack positioned him for the palace. Daniel's enemies threw him into the lion's den, but the attack became the setting for his promotion. Attacks that intensify before breakthrough may feel like the end, but they are often the stage where God displays his glory. The greatest danger is not the attack itself, but the temptation to give up under its weight. If you retreat in the middle of the battle, you miss the victory that was waiting just beyond it. The attacks before breakthrough are temporary, but the blessing on the other side is eternal. The fight is hardest right before the finish line, because that is when the enemy knows he is about to lose. So when you find yourself under unusual pressure, with resistance coming from every side, remember that it is not the end of your story. Attacks intensify not because you are failing, but because you are close to crossing into something greater. The enemy fights hardest when he knows he cannot win, and that is why the fiercest battles often come right before the greatest victories. When you are walking towards something big, one of the clearest signs is that doors you thought would remain open suddenly begin to close. Opportunities you believed were meant for you seem to vanish. People you depended on may walk away. Paths you expected to be smooth are blocked without warning. At first, this can feel like rejection, but in truth, it is redirection. God often uses closed doors not to punish you, but to position you for the one that truly leads to your destiny. Closed doors protect you from settling for less than what was meant for you. Sometimes the very things you prayed for in one season are no longer aligned with what God has prepared for you in the next. If every door remained open, you would be overwhelmed and distracted, unable to focus on the one opportunity that carries your true assignment. Closed doors strip away options that look good, but would have led you down the wrong path, so that the right door stands out when it finally opens. A closed door can also be a form of protection. You may not realize what lies behind that opportunity, but God sees the full picture. He knows the motives of people, the traps that are hidden, and the consequences that could unfold if you walk through something not designed for you. What looks like a painful rejection may actually be divine shielding, sparing you from heartbreak, disappointment, or even destruction that you never saw coming. It is easy to assume that closed doors mean failure, but they are often proof of growth. When a door shuts, it forces you to move forward instead of lingering in a place you have outgrown. Just like a bird is pushed from the nest to learn how to fly, closed doors push you to discover strength, courage, and faith you didn't know you had. They teach you that your provision doesn't come from the opportunity itself, but from the one who controls every door. Closed doors also sharpen your discernment. They train you to seek God more deeply, to rely on His direction rather than leaning on your own understanding. Instead of chasing every opportunity, you learn to wait for the door He chooses to open. This waiting process strengthens patience, humility, and trust, qualities you will need to handle the blessings that lie ahead. Without the lessons learned through closed doors, you might not be ready for the weight of the open one. When doors close, it often means the timing is not yet right. You may be prepared for the opportunity in your eyes, but the stage, the environment, or the people connected to it are not yet in place. God orchestrates more than just your readiness. He aligns circumstances so that when the right door opens, it leads you into favor, influence, and impact beyond what you imagined. A closed door today may simply mean preparation is happening behind the scenes for something greater tomorrow. The pattern of closed doors also helps you recognize the fingerprints of God. If everything opened easily, you might assume success came by your own strength. But when one door shuts after another, only for the right one to swing wide at the perfect moment, you cannot deny that God was guiding the process. The very frustration of closed doors turns into gratitude when you look back and see how they positioned you exactly where you needed to be. Closed doors also expose your motives. When an opportunity disappears, you are forced to examine whether you wanted it for recognition, security, or validation, or if it was truly aligned with your calling. God allows some doors to close so that your desires can be purified, so that when the right door opens, you walk through it with the right heart. This refinement ensures that success will not corrupt you, but instead bring glory to God. It is worth remembering that every significant breakthrough in Scripture was preceded by closed doors. Joseph faced betrayal and imprisonment before he reached the palace. Ruth lost her husband before she stepped into her destiny with Boaz. Paul faced prison cells before he carried the gospel across nations. Closed doors are not a denial of destiny, but often the very path that leads you into it. So when you see doors closing all around you, do not let discouragement define you. It is often the clearest sign that God is setting you up for the right one. Those closed doors are not meant to end your journey, but to guide you away from detours and distractions, positioning you perfectly for the opportunity that no one else can take and no enemy can shut. There are seasons when God will pull you away from the noise, strip away the company you relied on, and lead you into a place of isolation. It is in this hidden place that He begins to work on you in ways that would not have been possible if you were surrounded by constant distractions. Isolation is never random, it is intentional. It becomes the furnace where God shapes your character, sharpens your discernment, and builds the spiritual stamina you will need for the battles that lie ahead. In isolation, God deals with the layers of your heart. When there are no crowds to impress and no voices to lean on, you are left alone with Him. It is there that pride gets broken, motives are purified, and wounds you buried are brought to the surface for healing. The solitude may feel painful, but it is the very environment where God begins to strip away the parts of you that cannot carry into the next season. He takes away crutches so you learn how to walk on His strength alone. Isolation is also where your dependence shifts. As long as you had people to lean on, you didn't fully recognize how much you needed God. But when God removes the noise and allows you to feel the sting of being alone, you begin to realize that His presence is more than enough. Prayer becomes your lifeline, worship becomes your strength, and His word becomes your anchor. The very loneliness that feels like abandonment becomes the training ground for intimacy with God. In the quiet of isolation, your ears are trained to hear the voice of God more clearly. When the crowd is gone and the distractions are silent, the whispers of God become louder. You begin to recognize His direction, His correction, and His encouragement in ways you never noticed before. This clarity is not accidental. It is God sharpening your discernment so that when the noise of life returns, you will not be swayed by every voice, but will know how to distinguish His. Isolation is also where resilience is born. It is in that place of hiddenness that you learn how to survive without applause, how to fight without recognition, and how to press forward without validation. These are critical lessons, because once God elevates you, there will be times when opposition rises against you and support vanishes. What you learned in the quiet will sustain you in the public. The strength gained in private battles equips you for victories in public ones. In isolation, God often births vision. With fewer distractions, your spirit becomes more sensitive to divine downloads. Dreams, strategies, and assignments that could not be seen in the business of life begin to unfold. God uses solitude as a canvas to paint the bigger picture of your destiny, preparing you for assignments that will require focus, boldness, and clarity. Some of the greatest revelations in history were birthed when men and women of faith were separated from the crowd. Isolation also exposes what has been holding you back. Without people to blame or distractions to hide behind, you are confronted with yourself. God uses the quiet to reveal weaknesses you ignored, habits that need breaking, and fears you must overcome. While this process is uncomfortable, it is necessary. You cannot conquer what you refuse to confront, and isolation ensures you face those inner battles so that they no longer sabotage your future. The training ground of isolation is also where humility is forged. Without recognition, without applause, you learn how to serve quietly and faithfully. You discover that your worth is not tied to who notices you, but to the God who called you. This humility becomes a shield against pride when elevation comes. If you can remain faithful in the hidden place, you will be trustworthy in the spotlight. God often hides his strongest warriors until they are ready to handle the weight of their assignment. Isolation builds faith in ways that nothing else can. When there is no one to rescue you, you learn to trust God's provision. When there is no one to encourage you, you discover the strength of his word. When doors seem shut, you learn that his timing cannot be rushed. These lessons anchor your soul so that when storms come later, you will not be easily shaken. The faith forged in solitude becomes unshakable because it was built without dependence on others. Finally, isolation becomes the testing ground that proves you are ready for greater. If you can handle the silence without quitting, if you can embrace the hidden season without resentment, if you can grow in the unseen place without applause, then you are ready for the weight of visibility. Isolation is not a punishment but preparation, a divine training camp, where God equips you for battles you haven't yet seen and blessings you haven't yet touched when God is preparing to release something big into your life. One of the most undeniable signs is the appearance of unusual favor. It's not the kind of favor that can be explained by skill, connections, or effort alone. It is the type of favor that leaves people wondering how things lined up for you so quickly, why opportunities opened without warning, and why doors swung wide that had been locked for others. This kind of favor isn't earned. It's granted. It is divine intervention, moving on your behalf in ways that defy natural explanation. Unusual favor shows up when people you never met suddenly want to help you. Strangers speak your name in rooms you've never walked into. Decision makers who have the power to elevate you find themselves drawn to give you chances you didn't even ask for. Favor bypasses the normal process and accelerates what should have taken years into moments. While others wait in line, God's favor pushes you forward, not because of who you are, but because of who is backing you. This favor doesn't always make sense, and sometimes it draws confusion. People may look at your background, your qualifications, or your past and question why you received the opportunity instead of someone else. What they don't see is the unseen hand of God aligning every detail. Favor is not about fairness, it is about assignment. When you are chosen for a season, favor becomes the evidence that heaven has stamped approval on your destiny. Unusual favor also manifests in protection. Things that were supposed to harm you get turned into stepping stones. The very plot meant to bring you down becomes the platform that lifts you up. What was designed to close doors ends up opening better ones. This is how divine favor works. It turns what the enemy meant for evil into a tool for your good. It shields you from traps you never saw and fights battles you never knew existed. Sometimes unusual favor shows up in timing. You find yourself in the right place at the right moment, with the right words and the right people. You can't explain how everything fell together, but you know deep down it wasn't an accident. God orchestrates divine appointments where your obedience intersects with his perfect timing. In these moments, favor becomes undeniable proof that God's hand is leading the way. Unusual favor also brings resources. Doors open not just for opportunities, but for provision. People who don't even know you will feel compelled to bless you, sponsor you, or support what you're doing. You may not have the finances, the platform, or the means, but favor makes up the difference. God uses others as vessels to pour into your life, equipping you for the assignment He has placed in front of you. This type of favor is not limited to opportunities or resources. It often appears in relationships. The right people suddenly enter your life, people with wisdom, influence, or connections you couldn't have found on your own. They come as destiny helpers sent to guide, protect, or lift you at critical moments. Favor attracts divine alignments that push you forward into purpose. These are not casual connections. They are God-ordained partnerships that accelerate your journey. Unusual favor also disrupts the normal order. Where others are told no, you hear yes. Where others are denied, you are accepted. It's not because you deserve it more. It's because God is making a statement with your life. Favor causes systems, rules, and expectations to bend in your direction. What was supposed to be impossible becomes possible, and what was supposed to take years happens in a fraction of the time. Unusual favor often makes you a target. The moment others notice blessings you didn't chase, they begin to wonder and even envy. But even this is a sign that God's hand is on you. Favor distinguishes you. It marks you as different. You may not have asked for it, but you cannot hide it. And though it sometimes attracts opposition, it also proves that you are walking under a supernatural covering that no man can cancel. Finally, unusual favor is a signal that your next season is near. It is God's way of showing you that He has already gone before you to prepare the way. Every sudden opportunity, every unexpected blessing, every divine connection is a confirmation that what He promised is about to manifest. Favor doesn't just bless you, it positions you. It aligns you with destiny, showing that heaven is actively working on your behalf to usher you into the big thing God has prepared. When God is preparing you for something big, one of the clearest signs is that your faith begins to stretch beyond what feels comfortable. Faith is not developed in ease. It is forged in tension. In seasons where you cannot see how things will come together, but are forced to trust that they will. This stretching is uncomfortable because it pulls you out of the realm of what you can control and into the realm of what only God can do. It is in that stretch that you discover how strong your faith truly is and how deeply you are willing to trust God's hand when you cannot trace His plan. Faith stretching often looks like waiting longer than you thought you would have to. You thought the door would open by now. You thought the prayer would be answered by now. You thought the season would have shifted already. But instead, God allows the delay to pull you deeper into trust. Waiting stretches your faith because it forces you to believe that what God promised is still on the way, even when time seems to suggest otherwise. This kind of stretching also happens when resources don't line up with vision. God may give you a glimpse of the calling, the dream, or the next level, but then allow you to walk through a season where you lack the resources, support, or clarity to make it happen on your own. It feels like contradiction, but it is really training. He is stretching your faith to believe that He is your provider, not your bank account, not your connections, and not your own abilities. Faith is stretched in battles that feel too big for you. Sometimes you will face giants that make you feel small, mountains that appear immovable, and storms that seem unbearable. These are not designed to crush you, but to stretch you. When you are put in situations that are beyond your strength, you are forced to lean on God's strength. And in doing so, you discover that his power is made perfect in your weakness. Another way faith stretches is when God tells you to move without giving you all the details. He may give you the instruction, but not the full picture. He may tell you the what, but not the how. This lack of clarity stretches your faith because it requires obedience without explanation. It tests whether you trust him enough to step even when you cannot see the next step. That stretch is where faith grows into boldness and courage. Faith also stretches when you are surrounded by voices that contradict what God has said. People may tell you it's impossible, that you're not qualified, that it won't work out. The circumstances around you may scream louder than the promises within you. But this is where faith is tested and strengthened, when you choose to believe God's word over every other voice, even when the evidence seems to disagree. Sometimes faith is stretched through pruning. God may take things away, strip you of certain relationships, or close doors you thought you needed. It hurts, but the stretch is in realizing that what you lost is not the end, but the preparation for what's coming. Faith grows when you trust that subtraction in one season can lead to multiplication in another. Faith stretching often feels like contradiction. You may feel called to abundance while walking through lack, called to influence while remaining unseen, called to leadership while following in the shadows. These contradictions are not proof that you misheard God. They are proof that God is stretching your faith to believe beyond what is visible. The greater the tension, the greater the trust required, and the greater the testimony that will be birthed on the other side. In this stretching, God also teaches you dependence. He wants you to know that your success does not rest on your talent, wisdom, or strength alone. He allows you to reach the end of yourself so you can lean completely on Him. Faith stretched beyond comfort is faith that refuses to quit. Faith that grows roots deep enough to withstand storms, and faith that becomes unshakable no matter what comes. This season of stretching is not punishment. It is preparation. Every time you are pushed beyond comfort, your capacity for greater things is being expanded. The very discomfort you feel is the evidence that God is enlarging your faith for the promise that's ahead. You cannot carry big blessings with small faith. The stretch is proof that you are being prepared for something far greater than you can yet imagine. The waiting season always feels longer than what we anticipated because our natural timeline rarely matches God's divine timeline. We are wired to want things quickly, to see prayers answered immediately, to step into promises without delay. But waiting is where God does some of His deepest work, because it is in waiting that we are refined, strengthened, and prepared for what we asked for. The longer the wait, the deeper the preparation, and the greater the capacity you gain for what's coming. Waiting often feels like silence from heaven, like your prayers are hitting a wall, like nothing is shifting no matter how hard you pray or fast. But silence doesn't mean absence, and delay doesn't mean denial. Sometimes God stretches the waiting season because He is aligning things you cannot see, moving pieces behind the scenes, and making sure that when the promise finally arrives, it comes at the right time and in the right way. In waiting, you learn patience in ways you never would otherwise. Patience isn't just sitting still. It's holding on to hope when everything inside you wants to give up. It's resisting the urge to force doors open prematurely, trusting instead that God's timing will unlock the right ones. Waiting teaches you to rest even in uncertainty, and it builds a faith muscle that cannot be developed in instant gratification. The waiting season also exposes motives. It tests whether you wanted the promise more than the one who promised. Sometimes God will withhold the breakthrough to see if your heart still longs for Him, even when the blessing is delayed. It purifies your desires, stripping away selfish ambition and anchoring you in the truth that He Himself is your ultimate reward. Waiting seasons often feel lonely because not everyone around you will understand your process. While others seem to be moving forward, you may feel stuck, wondering why your life seems to be at a standstill. But the loneliness of waiting often becomes the womb where intimacy with God is birthed. It forces you to lean on Him in ways you never would if everything came easily. The waiting also creates hunger. When you wait long for something, you don't take it lightly once it comes. You value it more, you steward it better, and you carry it with a deeper sense of responsibility. Waiting removes entitlement and replaces it with gratitude. The very delay that frustrates you now is preparing you to honor the promise when it finally comes. Waiting can feel like a test of endurance. Days turn into months, months into years, and still the promise hasn't shown up. But what God is really testing is whether your faith has roots deep enough to survive the long drought. Will you still believe when the evidence hasn't changed? Will you still worship when the answer hasn't come? The longer the wait, the stronger the roots, and the greater the fruit that will eventually grow. The waiting season also develops character. It teaches humility, perseverance, and trust. It humbles you by showing that you cannot make things happen on your own. It gives you perseverance to press through difficulty, and it teaches you to trust God's wisdom over your own. Character developed in waiting becomes the foundation that will sustain you when the blessing arrives. Waiting seasons can feel like wasted time, but in reality, they are often the most productive seasons spiritually. They are where God refines you, equips you, and builds unseen strength. What looks like delay to you is often development in God's eyes. You may not see progress outwardly, but inwardly you are being transformed, stretched, and readied for what's ahead. Every moment of waiting builds expectation. The longer you wait, the greater the anticipation for what's coming. And when God finally releases the promise, the joy, gratitude, and awe you feel will outweigh the frustration of every delay. Waiting stretches you, molds you, and prepares you, and though it feels longer than expected, it is never wasted. So if life feels heavy, if battles seem unending, if the waiting is stretching you beyond your limits, lift up your head. That's not the end, that's the evidence. Something big is on its way. God is setting you up for overflow, for favor, for a blessing you won't even have room to contain. Hold on, because when God moves, He doesn't do it small. He does it big.